tea time. Welcome everybody, Souldin of the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now then, for today's tea time, whilst I'm unsure when this specific tea time will be uploaded, Evo has gone and passed, and I'm getting ahead of myself because I haven't introduced my tea yet. That's, priorities. Tea comes first. Now then, for today's tea, let me just grab the box here. It's a random selection of pucker teas I got at Christmas time. But the tea I'm having today, pucker branded one, is Detox Tea. Clean fusion of organic aniseed, fennel, and cardamom. Okay. Good news for giving your mind, body, and soul a fresh start. Naturally caffeine free, apparently, so that was going to be good because after this tea time, I'm going to hit the hay and just fall asleep for a bit. As I was saying though, Evo has just gone and passed, and unfortunately due to work hours and working days of my on and off job of all things, I was unable to actually watch anything at Evo properly. I saw some trailers and such and some gameplay footage, mostly courtesy of being a subscriber to Maximilian Dude, and as I enjoy his video content. But I wasn't able to sit down and watch any of the tournaments. I was kind of curious about watching the BlazBlue and King of Fighters tournaments. Sadly, there was, as per usual, no Dead or Alive, and there wasn't a Pokken tournament this year. So there wasn't too much that grasped my interest outside of, say, BlazBlue. But there was a lot of cool things at Evo, and generally, Evo having been going on has got my brain thinking about fighting games quite a bit. Got me in a bit of a fighting game mood. So for this tea time, I shall be covering a topic relating to fighting games, which you may be able to guess which fighting game I'm going to be talking about here and what it is concerning. I could have actually talked about this topic, I believe, before Evo, because I believe this interview that has led to this topic came about before then. The title of today's tea time is Fighting Functions. And it kind of concerns a game that everyone has been calling Functions vs. Functions Infinite, otherwise actually properly known as Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And it all relates to this interview that GameSpot did with two of the producers, well, a associate producer and a producer. A GameSpot interview with Peter Rosas, which I believe he's also known as Combo Fiend, and Michael Evans, or that could be Michelle Evans. I didn't note it down properly. So, and basically to summarise what happened, they're working on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and they got interviewed by GameSpot. And in this interview, they made quite a few comments which have caused a bit of a stir amongst fans and the fighting game community to a degree. And a lot of people have been talking about and making jokes and kind of just going with the flow of the Arc System Works demolishing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite gravy train that's been started. It is very entertaining. I mean, some people may be getting tired of it, but in all good fun, it is just funny to watch occur. So I'm going to start off with one quote before I delve into the topic of functions. And I believe this was said by Peter Rosas, the one responding, although I've added both Michael Evans' comments to it as one big paragraph. And the GameSpot interviewer commented, asked, how do you feel about people being hung up, lack of X-Men characters, on that? And Peter Rosas and Michael Evans ended up responding, if you were to think about it, these characters are just functions. They're just doing things. Magneto, case in point, is a favourite because he has 8-way dash and he's really fast, right? So our technical players, all they want to do is triangle jump and that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Nova can do the same thing. Captain Marvel can do the same thing. Ultron can do the same thing. Go ahead and try them out. It's just the function that people are associating with the character, and there's no shortage of that. We made sure that all proper play styles can be represented with our current roster. The design team has been looking at that very closely. We wanted to make sure that if there is a legacy character that doesn't happen to make the roster this time, that playstyle would still be represented. And that has, of course, been causing a stir, because what that kind of says is they're looking at things in terms of the functionality of the characters, the gameplay aspects of the characters, rather than who the characters are themselves. You know, they're not thinking of, say, we're not including Wolverine. They're thinking a bit more along the lines of, we're not including Wolverine's playstyle. Rather than worrying about including Wolverine, they then think, okay, how about we try to include a character who's like Wolverine or has mechanics from Wolverine? That sort of generally can be summarised from that excerpt. I'm going to add another little excerpt as well. They commented this a few times when asked about character selections, but I'm going to have point out as a paragraph I managed to quote down as well. So another quote. So when we're looking at character types and we want small quick characters and large brawler characters and everything, we try to have a good mix there, and also the fan service stuff too. And the reason I brought up that quote as well is because in regards to their function comments, I kind of agree. And put down the pitchforks, put down the pitchforks and the torches and all that. I don't agree entirely. I feel they are kind of looking at it in too narrow of a perspective, but I can understand where that perspective is coming from. You know, the fighting game characters being functional, both in the terms of trying to make sure that as many characters are viable as possible, as well as trying to make sure that each character is unique, is, you know, an honourable standpoint to go with. Take, for instance, the complaints that often get thrown out about clone characters. You know, Street Fighter series has been criticised a lot for having so many Shoto characters. Ryu was the sort of starter, but of course then you got Ken, Akuma, Sakura, Dan, and several others, and like evil versions of Ryu and Ken and all that. You know, and you know, Shoto characters have been complained about quite a lot. But these characters are also really popular. I feel less so because of their moveset in terms of the fact they are all Shoto characters, though with their differences, but because of the characters themselves, the legacies they've ended up building up and all that. But when you think about it mechanically, if people, you know, if they were to be altered a bit more, like to my knowledge, Ken did get altered quite a bit for Street Fighter 5, which whilst he still does have a lot of the same moves as Ryu, they worked hard to try and make sure that he was a bit more unique in himself. You know, people are less worried about alterations to trying to differ him away from that clone moveset thing, and more about the character themselves in that instance. Another sort of case where, you know, functionality is brought up as being an important factor is the Super Smash Bros. Series, where clones are often not regarded very highly. There is a lot of complaints in regards to the clone characters of Melee, as well as the clone characters that got introduced in, for instance, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. It's like, Dr. Mario is a big character of contention for the reason of, why bring him in? He's, you know, why have him as a separate character? He's got the exact same moveset. And there are, of course, sort of key problems, you know, where function is clearly something that does have to really be taken into account a lot. You know, you don't want clone characters. It's not only sort of boring to have a character who has the same moveset as another character, or who doesn't differ enough in terms of what they can do. It's also disappointing, in some cases, to the characters themselves. When you're using series which are taking the characters from other properties, it is very disappointing to then sort of play as, say, Ganondorf and realise that his moveset has basically nothing in common with his actual series, and that he's merely a clone of another character. And then that clone status is just carried on and on. They try to differ him, but they always feel that, you know, I believe in Sakurai's case, that there's a need to retain some of that original sort of moveset essence from back when he was a clone, so that people who played Ganondorf back in Melee and Brawl, where he is a clone character, they won't suddenly be thrown off when his moveset entirely changed to be something more befitting of the series. You know, let's be fair, you know, there is a good point to be made for a big focus on functionality in regards to a character, and focusing on trying to make each character as unique as possible. However, the problem is, as I believe I did mention a little, is that I believe the view that they've gone with is a bit too narrow, and that they have the sort of people, the producers of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, haven't taken into account the fact that not only are there characters from sort of existing IPs, but that carries a sort of certain weight to them as well. When people are speculating rosters, they're not just thinking about the case of, oh, I want a speedy character on the roster, I want a sort of strong character, people will consider that, but they're also considering other factors. They're considering about characters from certain series they like to see represented, good guys, bad guys, the various ethnicities, races, and mainly which gets brought up is the gender and sex of the characters. People like to sort of bring up, there's a sort of male character, so many male characters, so many female characters, so many good guys, bad guys, all that. And that's something that isn't to do with function. That doesn't affect their gameplay in any way. But it is something that people will bring up in terms of, this is a good roster because it's made sure to have such and such of these characters. And in regards to a series, you've also got other aspects of, they've got such and such series represented, or they've got such and such popular characters, but they've also got so many characters I'm not familiar with. And with the sequel, there's also the case of, they've got such and such veterans in, but they've also got a lot of newcomers in. Whilst of course function is such an important thing, you can't really just, take that away from considering the characters. Again, in the case of Smash Brothers, people often think about series representation. They want so many characters of so many series. And the same thing applies with Marvel vs. Capcom. People are disappointed if certain series don't have a character or as many characters. And again, you could give some of them, sort of share some of their movesets, give it to various other characters. But people want the series itself to be represented. Like, you could give any character a moveset in the style of Azura, but that wouldn't please the people who want Azura in, because what they truly want is Azura in. Bit of a random example there, but it's just one that kind of pops in my head. They want the characters because, as they are from an existing property, they want to see that particular character come in. They enjoy that character, not just their moveset. When they play as said character, they may find out that the function, the moveset, the gameplay style of that character isn't to their liking in the game, but they'll give a go at playing that character simply because they like that character. I'm not very good at... I keep bringing it back up to the Super Smash Bros. Situation, but it is a very accurate one. How about I bring up Dead or Alive instead then? I'm not very good with Kokoro, but I'll play as Kokoro. Why? Because I like Kokoro. I like her fighting style, even though I can barely master it in any way. And, people will, use characters they like, even in the face of, skill levels, even in the face of not being as big of a fan of their style, simply because they like that character to agree, where they're to ignore the gameplay aspect in favour of just simply playing as a character they like and enjoy. And vice versa, like, I wouldn't play as certain I would never even consider certain characters in Smash Bros. Like, or Dead or Alive or such, but I'll end up using them, even if they're not to liking, because I enjoy playing as them. I enjoy their fighting style. Let's see, Pokken Tournament at random. Pikachu Libre is a lot of fun to play as, but I'm not a fan of the fact that Pikachu Libre is in the game. I would never really consider sort of Robin in the game of Smash Brothers, but I really like playing as Robin in Super Smash Bros. Wii U. It's probably my second most used character besides Ganondorf. Ganondorf, I'm not a big sort of Legend of Zelda sort of fan, or a big fan of the character per se. I think Ganondorf's cool and all, but he's not like my sort of go-to choice, and yet he's become my Smash Bros. Main of all things. And that's because I enjoy their functions, as it were. It's weird that they said function for it. They could have just said gameplay, but I guess they didn't want to mix it up with the overall gameplay that they were discussing. They were discussing a lot. But yeah, function is important, but you can't just ignore all the other aspects and just focus on functions. That said, I do believe that a lot of people do care about functions in the sort of case that they wouldn't want too many clone characters, to be worried. I personally feel there is a little bit of concern having both X and Zero in the same game at the moment in case they end up playing a bit too similarly. I mean, sure, Zero's got his sword and all, but, they're both from the same series, and within canon, they do have a lot of similarities in terms of their gameplay styles of the Mega Man games, with exception to one having a sword and one not, with a focus on their blaster. But it is something to be brought up as a slight concern when you could have had even more varied characters. There's also the worry, there's a lot of gun users being added, and there's a concern of, they may play a bit too similarly if there's too many gun users. There's only so many times you can vary up a gun user within the same mechanics of a single game. And likewise, you also got to take into consideration that you can't just strap a function onto a character and say, hey, everyone will be happy. That didn't work for Ganondorf in Smash Brothers, and I can't imagine them sort of adding in, again with my example, say Azura, but then having him with a fighting style that doesn't sort of properly depict the character. To Capcom's credit, with a previous game, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, from what I've heard, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, from what I've heard, did a really good translation of actually incorporating Phoenix Wright's sort of style of his games, the Ace Attorney series, into a fighting game. You know, they stayed true to the character. They didn't sort of make him sort of like a brawler or anything that wouldn't fit his character and series. So, you know, there's also a case in point that people do care about function in wanting to represent their characters properly. But that's where their function, they want the function to serve. The function serving the character rather than the character serving the function. The character is actually being considered of more importance than the function in the majority of cases. The only case where they are concerned about it is in the need to avoid clone characters. You know, they want, and they, in that case, the function does start to have a bit of a precedent, but generally I feel, particularly with a more casual audience, rather than the technical players that they addressed here, the focus is more on just having characters they like, characters of certain sort of types, not just within the criteria of gameplay styles, you know, if I want this speedy fire, I want this brawler style, but in other categories of good guys, bad guys, and general series representation. That's basically all I have to say about it. I kind of wanted to make this sort of video on the basis that I feel that people are kind of being one-sided in their discussion in regards to the function. You know, there is a argument for a focus on function, and we all do care about function through various fighting games. You know, we care about, in the sense that they're addressing function. We want our fighting game characters to be unique. We want to, you know, be surprised at some of the interesting ways that they can work. And we also want the characters to try and stay as true to themselves as possible, so that it isn't just a sort of just a palette swap of a character. It is actually generally the character from that series being represented. Of course, some of this only applies in regards to series which have A, pulling from existing properties such as Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, or B, which have had a legacy that they've been built off of, again, much like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. However, that is something that should have been sort of noted when sort of going about making the game. It shouldn't be something that they would have to ignored, because as much of it as it is considered a reboot, that old history doesn't go away just with a reboot. There is still the expectation that comes from being a reboot of that original game. Whew, gosh. I feel I kind of repeated myself a bit there, but I feel I managed to make my point. I'm going to try this detox tea then. I hope I give it enough time to cool down. I've had it with no milk because it's a herbal tea and you don't usually have that with milk. This flavour is changing as it sits in my mouth. That is really weird. Let me have another sip. Weak flavours for the sip. A sweet taste on the tip of the tongue. And then a very refreshing, cool air kind of comes to the mouth. Like, it's, I guess it must be like a breath mint or mouthwash, but, you know, flavour. Yeah, it's, you know, like a minty sort of aftertaste in the back of the throat. Interesting. Not sure what to make of it, but it's certainly unique, the way the flavours just change and grow over time. It's still actually altering as I'm talking. So yeah, that's my tea time. Well, that was my tea of detox tea. And this was my tea time on fighting functions, just my sharing my thoughts of the GameSpot interview with Peter Rosas and Michael Evans in regards to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, focusing on the character roster and the discussion of character functions and, you know, why characters are included, yada yada yada. I've shared my thoughts, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to interact with you in regards to them, or even make your own video link me to it. I'll link you to... I'd said I'd link you to mine, but you'd have already seen it. But then if you're linking me to it, yours. In any case, I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to share your thoughts. And cheerio, everyone!